GIES Unit 2. My name is Andrew Brooksbank, and I will be attending the University of San Diego.
My name is Heather Foster, and I'll be attending Yale University.
My name is Kaylee Douglas, and I will be attending the University of Nevada.
My name is Tanner Erickson. I will also be attending the University of Nevada. Our unit coach is Lieutenant Colonel Scott Marriott, and our teacher is Mr. Richard Clark.
Okay, so I will read the question for you on your own. We are doing question 1. Alexander Hamilton wrote that the Constitution ensures the process of election for the moral certainty that the office of president will never fall to the lot of any man who is not in eminent degree endowed with the requisite qualifications. Talents are low trees, and the little arts of popularity may alone suffice to elevate a man to the first honors in a single state. But it will require other talents, any different kind of merit, to establish him in the esteem and confidence of the whole people, or of so considerable a portion of it that it would necessary to bring him a successful candidate for the distinguished office of President of the United States. To agree or disagree with Hamilton, why? What was the rationale for the establishment of the Electoral College to select the president? What basic democratic principles and values are involved in this topic? To what extent, if any, is the rationale used to justify the Electoral College relevant today? Explain the position. What might be the advantages and disadvantages of selecting the president by popular vote? What impediments, if any, would there be in adopting this procedure? How might they be overcome? Explain the position.
In principle, the Electoral College is dependent on a special body of delegates free from any sinister bias and possessive of the information and discernment requisite to such complicated investigations as argued by Federalist 68, provides for the election of a qualified president. But, as Winston Churchill stated, however beautiful the strategy, you should occasionally look at the results. In the years since its creation, the process of election has evolved to not assure such a candidate is elected.
The Committee of Eleven's proposal of the Electoral College provided a compromise between the proposed methods for electing the president. Governor Morris, among others, warned against the legislatively elected executive, arguing it would entice the work of intrigue, of cabal, and of faction. The idea to have a popularly elected executive was rejected by those such as Charles Pinckney, who declared that the people would be led by a few active and designing men.
Edmund Randolph and others argued that presidents elected by state executives would be little conversant with characters not within their own small spheres, and thus less likely to choose the most qualified president. The Electoral College was therefore chosen as a compromise, incorporating both classical Republican philosophy and Cicero's mixed state.
In creating this unprecedented institution, the framers partially renounced the democratic principle of popular sovereignty. However, in doing so, they protected national rights by lessening the possibility of candidates commencing as demagogues and ending as tyrants, as Federalists one argued. But, because of increased partisanship and faithless elected laws, the institution has diverged from its intended spirit and succumbed to populist tendencies.
Recent presidential elections exemplify how the Electoral College has further devolved from protecting small states' interests. During the 2016 campaign, 66% of all rallying events were held in just 6 of the 10 most populous states, despite them only having 20% of the nation's population.
But just as the Electoral College does not guarantee the equal distribution of campaign efforts, a typical plurality voting system doesn't inherently mean candidates would only campaign to the most populous states. For example, in the state of Ohio, where electors are voted for democratically, the distribution of campaign events is almost identical to the population distribution.
Under the current implementation of the Electoral College, all but 2 states, Maine and Nebraska, award delegates based on a winner-take-all basis. This denies citizens in non-swing states who vote against their state's predominant party the equality of votes that the Supreme Court in Baker v. Carr deemed necessary in state congressional elections.
Direct election of the president would reinstate this equality. However, this method has its drawbacks. Without restrictions on corporate de facto corruption or political patronage, successful candidates will likely be the most politically dominant, not necessarily the most qualified individuals. This can be seen by the co-optation of the South African state by the British and by the current actions of Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela.
In order to enact a simple first-past-the-post system, an amendment can be passed with relatively little difficulty. Under the current system, the 18 largest states are underrepresented, and in the 1960s, Delaware's Attorney General, David Buxton, led a coalition of 12 small states in an attempt to eliminate the Electoral College. With both small and large states in favor, an amendment could likely pass with 3/4 of states ratifying.
However, in light of the difficulties of passing any constitutional amendment, the Campaign for a National Popular Vote has been using the state delegated powers in Article 2, Section 1. Already, 11 states and the District of Columbia have agreed to award electors by the national popular vote. Implementing these laws in states totaling the total majority of the electoral votes would thus eliminate the need for a constitutional amendment and adhere to the belief, as expressed in Cato 4, that the safety of the people in a republic depends on the share or proportion they have in government. Thank you.
Thank you. I have some follow-ups. Can you explain how electors are currently chosen and whether you support that approach or should it be changed?
Electors are currently chosen by the political parties, and whichever candidate wins the state's popular vote, in all but Maine and Nebraska will have their party's electors go to the convention and vote on the actual president. This should be changed because the Electoral College was never intended to have these political parties, and so they co-opt the system and force a polarized bipartisan system as opposed to a more inclusive political structure.
And specifically in Article 2, Section 1, which designates the states the authority to decide how these electors are selected, I would argue a better way to select electors is to have citizens of the United States vote for their electors rather than vote for a presidential candidate and have those electors then send based on political party, thus representing the ideas exemplified in Federalist 68, expressing the need for a type of Cicero's mixed state, which incorporates the educated elite, those individuals that people are electing to the Electoral College, and providing a check on mob rule, but still eliminating the risk of monarchy.
You brought up Baker versus Carr. How exactly does Baker versus Carr relate to the Electoral College?
Baker versus Carr determined that state elections had to have at least rough equality, and this removed many state senates which were based on counties and had equal proportionality. This is directly relevant to the Electoral College, not because of the word of the law, not because of the word of the case, but because of the principles behind it. If we look at Wyoming, for example, they have less than 500,000 residents, and yet they get 3 electoral votes. They should really only get less than 1. California, they should get 10 more electoral votes, but they do not. Thus, we do not have an equity vote.
How has the value of experience in elected officials changed between Hamilton's time and his view specifically and today? Should we value experience more than we do?
Well, at the time of the founding, the founders really idealized this view of liberty because they had been subjected to the oppressive British government. And ever since Andrew Jackson, who campaigned on being a man of the people, we've really gone towards a more populist tendency in which there's been a huge push for this one man, one vote, in which it would be more of a populist tendency.
And we can see that this, now in today's day and age, we aren't seeing as much of this experience basis. With the election of President Donald Trump, there wasn't exactly that experience level that was needed. And we saw with the people, even though the popular vote did go to Secretary Clinton, the electoral vote did go to Donald Trump, President Donald Trump, which showed that experience isn't as important as it used to be.
If we look to the past 2 presidents, experience has most certainly been drastically decreased in the very recent time frame, likely because of technological innovations, disturbances in the workforce, and other factors. Because then Senator Obama was a one-term senator who had not voted a particularly large amount, and yet he was able to win on a message of hope and change. President Donald Trump was able to run and win the presidency, having never held elected office because he promised to make America great again.
However, this isn't a new sentiment. In fact, one of our greatest presidents, President Abraham Lincoln, mirrored President Obama's stance as a one-term senator from Illinois before being elected to the presidency.
So, you mentioned that experience doesn't seem to be what dominates the election, but Hamilton talks about requisite qualifications. So I'm wondering if you could explain what those qualifications should be. And I'd like you to put both in terms of what Hamilton thought and what you think about election presidents today.
When returning to this idea that we've been discussing, this idea of experience, I do think that should be some sort of requirement for a political official. Specifically, we're looking at individuals such as President Donald Trump. A lot of his executive orders, such as his 2 immigration bans, which have ultimately been found to be unconstitutional,
he wasn't the best fit for the country. He presided over the country during a time with great divisiveness, when the North and the South were in such great conflict, and he wasn't able to effectively keep the country together.
Is it fair that the Electoral College overrepresents smaller states?
No, it is not. This is often argued that this helps small states. This gets people to go to small states. Well, 12 smaller states received no presidential campaign visits in the last electoral cycle. Well, Nevada, a state of 4 million, received 17. That's wildly disproportionate. Thus, we are denying these other states equity of visits and being able to actually interact with these candidates, because the Electoral College does not value small states. It values swing states.
In your view, how has the operation of the Electoral College changed over the course of American history?
Well, specifically today, we see that there is faithless elector laws. So specifically in the state of Nevada, we see that if you are a faithless elector, you are then given a misdemeanor charge and a $1,000 fine. So this has then shifted the original intent of the Electoral College, which was to have very educated people to then make the decisions for the rest of the nation, because at the founding of the nation, there was not as much technology, and it wasn't easy to get places, and so there wasn't as much information coming into individuals. So we can see that through the evolution, faithless elector laws and all of this has related more towards a direct democracy and more of a popular vote.
All right, thank you very much.
I love some of the examples that you gave. I really like how you talked about Obama and Trump having maybe not as much experience as you would think, and then also relating that to Lincoln, that it's not necessarily just a new phenomenon. So you did a great job talking about that. I love how you brought up Baker versus Carr with equal protection, and you're the first group that brought that up, so that was interesting to hear.
I think you guys did a terrific job. Starting with, I think this is a difficult question because it's obviously Unit 2 that should be about the history, and yet this question is so relevant to today. And you did a nice job of finding the balance between the historical perspective and what's going on today. I liked that in your prepared statement that you went through the alternatives to the Electoral College back to the Constitutional Convention and what the issues were there. And it never hurts to bring in Churchill, so that was also a touch there. I thought, but on the other hand, when we were talking about more contemporary issues, you were able to bring in a number of things, including the Delaware effort from the 1960s to get rid of the Electoral College. So I think you did a really nice job of finding that proper balance. Well done.
I agree. You guys did a nice job of being able to show the contemporary application, but to also take it back into the historical perspective, both throughout American